Welcome back to Killer Stories. I'm your host, Bobby Holmes. Today I'm covering the case of Mark Twitchell, aka the Dexter Copycat Killer. If you listen to the collabs between myself and Stuart Blues of British Murders, you may have heard this story in early January on his show. The reason I chose this case is because I have a group chat going with Stu and our other podcaster friend Lorraine from Once Upon a Nightmare, and we were really into Dexter New Blood. After finishing each episode, we jumped on the chat to discuss it, and I was a big fan of the season, by the way. Well, Mark Twtichell, the killer in today's story, was inspired by and basically obsessed with the fictional character Dexter Morgan. And it's okay to love the show. So many of us did, or do. In fact, I named my dog Dexter. But there's a big difference in being a fan of the show and wanting to be like Dexter. Let's start with a little background on our killer. Mark Twtichell was born July 4th, 1979 in Edmonton, the capital of Alberta, Canada. As a child, Mark was fascinated with cinema. He knew from an early age that he wanted to be behind the scenes directing movies. He attended the Radio and Television Arts program at the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, graduating in the year 2000. Just a year after graduating with his Radio and Television Arts degree, he married an American woman named Megan and moved to her hometown in Illinois. This marriage was short-lived. The couple divorced in 2004. Mark would treat TV and movies like reality and put himself in the place of characters, which seemed very strange to Megan. Not only that, but he would create fake profiles online to mess with people. He got a kick out of it. Megan later told police that one day out of the blue, Mark asked her if she ever thought about killing someone. He went on to explain how he would choose a homeless person because no one would notice they were missing. Megan was slightly alarmed by his comment, but didn't take him seriously. Their marriage ultimately ended because Mark was unfaithful. On multiple occasions, he would confess to Megan, yet showed no remorse for his actions. After the divorce, Mark moved back to Canada. Mark's big claim to fame was directing Star Wars: Secrets of the Rebellion in 2007. It's a fan film prequel to the original Star Wars movie. Fan films are usually amateur but can be professionally produced. This particular film did seem to have a bit of Star Wars legitimacy. There was an appearance by British actor Jeremy Bulloch, who played the character Boba Fett. Secrets of the Rebellion, unfortunately, was never released. It's stuck in the post-production process. Mark met his next wife, Jess, on the dating site Plenty of Fish. They married and had a daughter together in 2008. But he just couldn't stay off the dating sites. He was caught red-handed by Jess using a site specifically for married people to arrange affairs. It's called Ashley Madison. Mark was a habitual liar. Jess didn't know, but Mark had been laid off from his job and was now spending all of his time working on his next production. Every day he left for work, but really he drove to a rented garage suite that was filled with wardrobe options, backdrops, and movie props. He either spent the day there or at a coffee shop working on his script. Mark started another profile on the dating site Plenty of Fish. But Mark didn't join as Mark. He had ulterior motives for the profile. He was catfishing. And in case you live under a rock, catfishing is where a person creates a fictional persona or fake identity on social networking service. Most are out to scam people for financial gain. Others just like to cause pain, discomfort, or embarrassment to the person on the other side of the conversation. And some just get off pretending to be someone else. They live their life as Joe Schmo, and then at the end of the day, they get to log in and be Joe Millionaire, or whoever their little heart desires. I have a crazy catfishing story that I'm going to be covering in the near future. In October of 2008, Mark logged into Plenty of Fish as Sheena. I bet you didn't see that coming. He pretended to be a 20-something, attractive, petite blonde looking for love. He began chatting with a man named Gilles Tetreault. Gilles was recently separated from his wife and had just moved to Edmonton a few months earlier. He was using Plenty of Fish to try and meet new people, make friends, and possibly even find love. Mark Twtichell shows us that it's not just women who are victim to the creeps of online dating sites. He was pretending to be a woman and luring in men. Back to poor Gilles. He thought he was meeting up with Sheena for dinner and a movie. The weird thing was Sheena, or Mark, didn't want to give out a physical address of the garage suite. Sheena wanted to, quote, make sure he wasn't a weirdo first. Weirdo, says the man pretending to be a woman online. Instead, he gives Gilles lengthy directions on how to get to his garage suite, and I'll read you the actual message. So, okay, Friday. If you're coming from the north on Grote, get on Calgary Trail. When you get to the south side, jump on White Mud. Then go south on 50th Street. Take a right on 40 Ave, and after a block or two, take the very first right into the alley. It's marked by a yellow crosswalk sign, so pay attention. Then go left and pull into the only driveway on your left that isn't paved, LOL. Seriously, whoever heard of a driveway that looks like the Amazon? Whatever. It won't swallow your car, I promise. There's some garbage against the fence, like an old couch and such. It might be gone by Friday. Who knows? Like I said, the garage door will be open for you a touch. Don't worry about neighbors thinking you're a burglar. Everyone knows there's nothing valuable in there, except my car, of course. Oi. See you then, Sheena. It was already dark at 7 p.m. on the evening of Friday, October 3rd, 2008. Gilles saw the garage that Sheena described and parked his car. Just like she had said, the door was partially opened. He bent down to crawl inside, but as he did so, he was hit from behind and felt his body convulse. Whoever hit him in the head had then used a stun gun to subdue him. Gilles fell to the ground and noticed the person attacking him was wearing a hockey mask. The man pulled out a strip of duct tape and covered his eyes. Gilles fought back the best he could, but his muscles weren't working properly from the stun gun. He was freaking out because he hadn't told anyone where he was going. If he disappeared, no one would know where to look for him. A burst of adrenaline must have kicked in. Gilles ripped the duct tape off of his eyes and pulled himself up. The attacker, Mark, was pointing a gun at him. Gilles probably thought if he didn't try to stop him, he was surely going to die, so he reached out to grab the gun. It was plastic, a freaking movie prop. Punches were thrown by both men, and Gilles ended up back on the ground. He tucked and rolled underneath the garage door, ending up back in the alleyway. Mark followed and grabbed his legs. Just then, a couple, Marissa and Trevor, came around the corner walking their dog. Gilles yelled out for help. Mark, still wearing a mask I might add, calmly explained that they were friends and he was just overreacting. Then he turned and walked away. Not knowing what they should do, Trevor and Marissa rushed back to their home where they called 911. Trevor then walked police to where he witnessed the altercation. Both men were gone. Gilles was able to escape. For whatever reason, perhaps embarrassment of being catfished, he did not report the attack to police. The event was left at that. The police didn't find the victim or the man in the hockey mask. 1 week later, Mark tried his luck on Plenty of Fish again. This time he pretended to be a woman named Jen, and he hooked 38-year-old Johnny Altinger. Johnny worked in quality control at an oil field equipment manufacturer near Edmonton. He spent a lot of time online and used his screen name Ultra Magnus. Johnny was a single guy. That's why normal people join Plenty of Fish. He lived alone and owned 2 motorcycles that were his prized possessions. William, a coworker of Johnny's, was using the same dating sites, and they usually communicated with each other regularly in person and via email. In other words, they were pretty close friends and did tend to share details about their dates. Johnny told William that he met a woman on Plenty of Fish and was going to meet up with her Friday night, October 10th. Jen wrote to Johnny saying, quote, "If we really gel, you said you have 4 days off. How long can I keep you for if I choose? Maybe you should pack for a few days, LOL." Personally, that would be a big red flag for me. First dates shouldn't last 4 days. But I'm sure people were using this site like Tinder, which wasn't even created until 2012, so maybe it's not as creepy sounding as I think. But Johnny had plans that Sunday to ride with a friend named Dale who just got a new motorcycle, so he was not planning on the date lasting all weekend. Just like Mark did with Gilles, he gave Johnny weird roundabout directions to the garage suite versus an actual physical address. He told Dale about his hot date, but shared concerns about the weird directions. Dale also found it strange and asked Johnny to call and check in when he got there. That night, Johnny followed a treasure map of directions that ended at the cracked open garage described by Jen. But Jen wasn't there. Instead, Johnny was greeted by a man who was filming a movie. They carried on a friendly chat, but he decided to leave since Jen wasn't there. This part's a bit confusing to me. Maybe Mark wanted to meet him in person and decide if he was able to overpower Johnny successfully. And why was this not concerning to Johnny? Who did he think this man was, and why was he filming a movie in Jen's garage? Jen contacted Johnny again through Plenty of Fish and apologized for not being home when he arrived. She said that she was home now and it was safe for him to come back. Johnny sent Dale a follow-up message explaining the situation. But that was the last he heard from Johnny. He stood Dale up for their Sunday plans to ride, and that is when Dale really started to worry. He contacted Johnny's coworkers, and they decided to conduct their own wellness check, but there was no answer at Johnny's apartment. His 2 motorcycles were there, but his red Mazda 3 was not. Concerns for Johnny's safety grew, and his friends went to the police. Of course, they did not take this missing person report seriously, a 38-year-old man that hasn't touched base with his friends in 2 days. I know that doesn't sound odd, but I do wish police would just trust when people say this is completely out of character, instead of waiting for more time to pass. The following Monday, many of the people close to Johnny received an email from him. William's email was titled, "It's All Good." It read something along these lines. "Hey man, Jen and I hit it off big time. She has a lot of money and offered to take me to Costa Rica with her for 3 months. Nothing about this email sat well with William. First of all, "Hey man," that was not a greeting he had ever used before. Running off with someone he just met is not something Johnny would do. Dale and Johnny's brother received similar emails. When William spoke with his boss, who is also Johnny's boss, he told William that Johnny emailed him a letter of resignation. But not because he was going to Costa Rica. The email said he had another job offer that he just couldn't pass up. So there are conflicting stories here. Johnny must have been pretty popular. Another friend, Marcelo, also filed a missing person report to the police. An officer said they would come by his house to take a statement, but never did. You would think, with multiple calls about Johnny, that police would move forward with an investigation, but they apparently couldn't be bothered with it. Johnny's friends weren't going to sit back and wait for the police to get their act together. They went back to Johnny's apartment and broke in to investigate. The place did not seem like he was gone on vacation. In fact, they found his passport, which would be needed if he was actually traveling to Costa Rica. Finally, after 9 days, police decided it was time to look for Johnny. Luckily, Johnny had forwarded the weird set of directions to Dale. Police found that the garage suite was currently being rented by a man named Mark Twitchell. When they contacted Mark, he stated that he was using the space to film a movie, and the last time he was in the garage was 9 days earlier. Suspiciously, the same day that Johnny went missing. Police asked Mark to come meet them so they could search the garage. Right off the bat, Mark said the padlock on the door was not the one he had been using, insinuating that someone else had been there and changed the lock. When they entered, Mark seemed surprised by the state of the suite. The lights were on, and he pointed to a large steel drum. It looked as if it had been used as a fire pit, but Mark explained that he was just using it as a garbage can. He had no explanation for its current state. Mark was taken to the police station and formally interviewed. He told them that he was there the day of October 10th, but was just cleaning up and was gone by 5:30 p.m. He went on to tell them about his new film and boasted that his budget was $3 million. And to me, that seems like a lot for an amateur filmmaker. But he claimed to have multiple investors, including his brother-in-law and a random accountant he found online. He planned to enter it into multiple film festivals to help boost his career. You can listen to the taped interviews. Mark sounds very cool and collected, bragging about his Star Wars fan film that was currently in post-production. The investigator acted interested to keep him talking, but eventually cut to the chase. He confirmed with Mark that he was renting the suite and technically should be the only person who had access to it. Then he asked one more time when was the last time he was there. Mark hem-hawed around and said that he had troubles with remembering things, and he relies on lists that he makes to execute tasks. I mean, so do I. If I don't write down a grocery list, I'm screwed. But that's not the same thing as thinking back as to where you were the past week. He didn't live close, so I think he would remember driving there. This was when the investigator finally brought up Johnny Altinger as the missing person they were looking for. Mark denied knowing him. He confirmed he is not an actor in his film or on the production crew, supposedly never heard of him. Police found it strange that this Jen character gave directions to the garage that he was renting, and that Johnny showed up at the time he was supposed to meet Jen and instead was greeted by a man in the garage. You should hear Mark play dumb on the recording. It's almost comical. He's like, "In the garage? Okay." Like he's trying to process this information. Like, who on earth could that be? Then he is questioned about dating sites. Mark said he has never used them. A blatant lie. That is how he met both of his wives. But he did admit to researching them for a freelance article he wrote. I guess just covering his tracks if the sites are found in his search history. Somehow, investigators were not suspicious of Mark following this interview. His cool demeanor led them to believe he was being truthful. A few days after the interview, Mark sent an email to the officer stating a few things he forgot to mention. I guess because it wasn't written in list form, his brain just had trouble remembering. Mark said his car was broken into while parked at the mall, and the only thing he noticed missing was a receipt. This receipt apparently had his address on it, and a few days later, the door to his home was unlocked, and he always locked the door when he left. After this, while at a gas station, a man walked over to his car and knocked on the window. He rolled down his window, and this man says he's moving to the Caribbean with his, quote, sugar mama, and needed to sell his car cheap and fast. Just listen to this. Mark says he bought the car from this man with the cash he had on him at the time, $40. A red Mazda 3, Johnny Altinger's car. I do not understand why he would come forward with this information. It seems damning. But he claims whoever stole the receipt from his car stole all his personal information and was the person responsible for luring Johnny to his rented garage. If police don't see through this bullshit, then shame on them. Remember Marissa and Trevor, the couple that witnessed Gilles on the ground in the alley calling out for help? Well, when they heard about the missing man who was last seen in their area, they assumed that's who they saw that day and followed back up with police. When the timeline was laid out, they realized this was a separate incident. Using media outlets, the police asked for anyone with information about the first attack or Johnny Altinger to come forward. It took Gilles a month to work up the courage to speak to police. He explained that if the man simply wanted to kill him, he could have done so right away. But instead, he used a stun gun on him, and Gilles felt like he had a bigger plan in mind. Mark Twtichell was brought back for questioning. The investigator got right down to business this time. He was like, "I know you're involved. This isn't going to go away, so you might as well speak up." A neighbor came forward as an eyewitness to Mark changing the padlock on the door. And Mark said this was ridiculous and he wasn't talking anymore. The investigator said, "You need to tell the truth. You don't want to live with this for the rest of your life." Mark's response, "You'd be surprised at what I can live with." Unfortunately, all they had was circumstantial evidence, and they couldn't make an arrest without a confession. Police issued a warrant to search Mark's car and home. Now for the plot of the suspense thriller that Mark was in the process of filming. I don't know if you're ready for this. It was about a killer who used dating sites to track down married men who were looking for mistresses. He would lure them to his garage. Plot twist. Dum dum dum. The killer was actually a filmmaker who was doing research for thriller films by murdering people. When police searched his home and car, they found many incriminating receipts. First off, the hockey mask that Gilles reported the attacker wearing. Another was the steel drum that police found used as a fire pit in the garage. Overalls, duct tape, and drop cloth from Home Depot. Basically a Dexter Morgan kill room setup. Online purchases included a stun gun, handcuffs, and a meat cleaver. In his car was a book about Dexter, and multiple DVDs of the Showtime series were found in his basement. On Mark's laptop was a deleted document titled SK Confessions. SK. When police questioned Mark about this, he said it stood for his favorite author, Stephen King. Police believed it stood for serial killer, mainly because the very first line written in this document was, quote, "This is the story of my progression into becoming a serial killer." It's basically a diary. He writes about his first failed attempt. It was essentially a written confession to what happened the night of October 10th, 2008. When Johnny came back into the garage, Mark hit him over the head with a pipe. Then, using a knife, he stabbed him in the neck and abdomen. Then he went into disturbing details of how he dismembered Johnny's body. He parked the red Mazda 3 into the garage and left. He later broke into Johnny's apartment. With his laptop, he was able to access his email account and send the messages to his friends and coworkers. He came back to the garage at a later date and attempted to burn his body inside of the steel drum. A quote from the SK Confessions. "Most people fantasize, and it only ever stays a fantasy. They don't have the disposition or the stomach to go all the way with their dark urges, but I do. I do not have any reservation about disposing of the negative people in this world who deserve a one-way ticket to the afterlife, if such a thing exists." Apparently, this is why his name is the Dexter Copycat Killer, because he read the book, watched the show, and in his twisted mind, he was taking out the trash. But Gilles and Johnny were not bad people. Not that killing anyone is okay, but Dexter was somewhat of a vigilante. He cleaned up what the police couldn't. And this is not at all the same. Edmonton police had the evidence they needed to arrest Mark. An officer posed as an investor looking to help with his upcoming film. They met on October 31st, 2008 at a coffee shop. To Mark's surprise, he was tackled to the ground and put into cuffs. He was under arrest for the murder of Johnny Altinger. Mark kept silent and refused to speak to police. After 18 months, Mark and his lawyer finally set a meeting to talk with an investigator. Talk might not be the right word. All he did was hand them a piece of paper, and on that paper was a Google Map image with the directions to where he can find Johnny Altinger's body. Police followed the instructions and found Johnny's remains in a storm drain. During the trial against Mark Twtichell, his now ex-wife, Jess, and attempted murder victim, Gilles, testified against him. Jess did not have kind things to say. He lied, he cheated, and he lived in a cinematic fantasy world. Another person to testify against Mark was a friend from the internet, a woman named Renee. She knew Mark as the screen name Dexter Morgan. So original. Renee was recently divorced and angry at the fact her ex had moved on with a new woman. She hated her and shared with Mark her dark fantasy of killing her. Mark took things to another level by telling her exactly how to execute it, to make a kill room just like Dexter, covered in plastic for easy cleanup. Renee was all bark and no bite, but Mark was serious. After his encounter with Johnny Altinger, he all but confessed to Renee. He didn't give details, but he said, quote, "crossed the line on Friday, and I liked it." Physical evidence of Johnny's murder was just about everywhere. Items with his blood were found in the garage, in Mark's car, his home, and on his person. His belt that he was wearing when arrested actually had traces of Johnny's blood on it. Mark was put on the stand at his trial. He admitted to posing as both Sheena and Jen online. He did lure the men to his garage, but he wanted to film the events and have the audience wonder if it was real. According to Mark, when Johnny discovered that he was catfished, he was furious and reached down for the pipe to attack Mark. Mark only killed him in self-defense. Obviously a load of shit. The jury deliberated for just 5 hours, coming back with a guilty verdict of first-degree murder. Sentenced to 25 years to life without the eligibility for parole. Michael C. Hall, who plays the character Dexter, as well as the writers and producers of the series, made a public statement that they did not approve of Mark Twitchell's actions. As if that is necessary. Dexter is a TV show, fiction. They felt the need to tell people that watching the show will not make you a serial killer. Gilles, the first intended victim of Mark Twtichell, wrote a book about his experience. It was titled, "The One Who Got Away, Escape from the Kill Room." Mark is currently serving his sentence at the Saskatchewan Penitentiary in Prince Albert, and he has a dating profile on a site for prison inmates to find love. And that's the case of Mark Twtichell, the Dexter Copycat Killer. Let's take a moment and give a few shout-outs to my listeners. The first 5-star review comes from Madeline on Apple Podcasts, and her name is put between 2 cute little potted plant emojis. This podcast is amazing, and I binged all of them in one day. I look forward to this every week. I have an idea for a case, and I'm sorry I don't know her real name, but it's the Hello Kitty case. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. Madeline, thank you for your kind words, and I love hearing that people think I'm binge-worthy. The Hello Kitty murder is a highly publicized case from Hong Kong in 1999. Thank you for the suggestion. I've added it to the list, but given I just covered Sylvia Likens, I need a few weeks in between these horrific torture cases. Next is from Dude N420, titled My New Favorite Podcast. I love these stories and the host is great. I highly suggest Killer Stories if you're into true crime. I appreciate every one of you who listens and shares the show with your true crime loving friends. If you want to leave a review, you can do so on Apple Podcasts or on Facebook, and you are now able to leave a star rating on Spotify. Other ways to support the show are by giving a one-time donation at buymeacoffee.com/killerstories. as well as purchasing Killer Stories merch through Freedom Street Boutique. You can find the link to shop in the show notes. Email me any story suggestions or inquiries to sponsor a future episode of Killer Stories to killerstoriespodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Killer Stories Podcast, and I'm on Twitter at Killer Stories PC. As always, thanks for listening. Until next time, this has been a Killer Story.